There were some nights that I debated whether or not this is something that I actually wanted to do. They were late for the interview. I don't really feel like they took the interview seriously. So needless to say that I, got a rejection letter from that school, and that's okay. I knew it was coming, but it's fine. It wasn't meant to be for me to go to that school. Emotionally, it was hard. Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Kaylana, and in this video I want to tell you about how I made it into CRNA school. So for those who don't know what CRNA is, it's a certified registered nurse anesthetist, and obviously we are nurses, but we specialize in anesthesia. It is highly respected, and it's also very challenging to get into the field. In other videos I will talk about how, yes, while it is challenging, it's not impossible. But in this video, I want to talk about my non-traditional path to becoming a CRNA, because in the various posts and different people that I've talked to and just different things that I've heard, I've only actually met one other person who had the same path that I did, and even hers was different. So if you're interested, then please continue to watch. I started off as, nursing was my second career, and I love medicine, I love people. The sciences have always been my strong point. At one point I wanted to be a surgeon, but I didn't want to be in school for a million years. Sidebar, I think I have been in school for almost a million years. I just wanted to have a better paying job, work 3 days a week, and be done with it. Fast forward, shortly after getting out of nursing school, graduating, whatever, I started working in the OR. And this is where this all began. I worked in cardiac, like CVOR, and I did heart and lung transplants, and then eventually I worked in vascular department, and we did all sorts of interesting cases. But it was then, or through those 4 years, that I really took an interest in nurse anesthesia. Our anesthesia team was amazing, both the MDAs and the CRNAs. They always seemed so happy. I mean, obviously people have bad days, but just as a whole, this group of people, they were amazing. They were always so friendly and just, very down to earth. I was getting kind of bored as a circulator. I didn't scrub. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. Although I do have a degree in management, that's my first degree. I didn't want to get into management. I just kind of wanted to, do what I had to do and go home. My CRNA friends and even a couple of the MDAs were like, why don't you go into nurse anesthesia? And I was always like, I can't do that. Not me. But eventually I started thinking to myself, why don't you try to become a CRNA? My hospital had a nurse internship program for transitioning to critical care. Traditionally, this internship program was for nurses going from PCU to ICU, maybe even med-surg to ICU. Typically, it's not for OR circulators going straight to ICU. I figured, hey, let me give it a try. If I don't get hired, then at least I know, and I'll never have regrets as to whether or not, what could have been. I interviewed with one unit, and it didn't go very well. They were late for the interview. I don't really feel like they took the interview seriously. They asked me things that I now know only an ICU nurse would know. I just don't really feel like it was in my cards to work on that floor. Their recommendation was to start in PCU, and then, in 6 months, then I could maybe go to ICU and see what happens. But the thing is, we have to sign contracts. So if I had gotten hired on a PCU floor, it wouldn't have been 6 months, it would have been 2 years. So I decided I didn't want to do that. I interviewed with another floor, which was a challenging floor, but I would have learned a lot. And again, don't think that they ever intended to hire me. The nurse manager was there, but she wasn't fully paying attention. She was doing something on her computer. The way the educator was talking to me was kind of condescending. They made me draw the blood flow through the heart on a paper, which I did. I mean, I worked in cardiac surgery. Their recommendation was to start in PCU, maybe in 6 months, then you can transfer to ICU, and we'll see what happens. So I decided not to do that either. I almost gave up, and I thought to myself, give it one more try. So I spoke to the nurse recruiter, and I asked her to let me know if there were any positions available in some of the satellite hospitals, some of the smaller ones, because I worked in the downtown hospital, which is the larger hospital where we get all the train wrecks, the more complex cases, you name it. So I ended up doing an interview at a smaller hospital, and I got hired. It wasn't a crazy hard interview. I was given a tour afterwards. It just felt right. That's where I started. I was on this unit for a year and a half. The first 6 months was difficult. It was a very steep learning curve. I wouldn't say that it was necessarily any more difficult than starting off as a grad nurse. So I see a lot of questions from new nurses saying, hey, should I go directly to ICU after graduating? That's totally dependent on the type of person that you are, but I will let you know that it is stressful. It doesn't matter if you were top of your class, straight A's. It's stressful. It's totally different line of thinking, especially coming from the OR. There were some nights that I debated whether or not this is something that I actually wanted to do, especially because at this point, becoming a CRNA was not guaranteed. So anyways, fast forward to 6 months, and I started getting the hang of things and getting different cases. And this was a medical ICU, so I got a little bit of everything, but I fell in love with critical care. And I stopped doubting myself. I think that was one of the biggest things in the beginning when people suggested, hey, why don't you go to CRNA school? And I was like, no, I'm not smart enough for that. It was me holding myself back. So you have to make sure that you are not standing in your own way. I decided that I would switch to a CVICU. I wanted to switch to a cardiac ICU because I wanted more experience with swans and even more critically ill patients. I just thought it would be a great experience, and it looks great on your application to CRNA school. Meanwhile, I was studying for the CCRN. If you don't know what that is, it is Critical Care Registered Nurse Certification, which a lot of schools prefer, but they do not require. Some do require them, but just know that the majority of the candidates that you apply with will have their CCRN, so you might as well go ahead and plan on taking it. I was also studying for the GRE. The GRE is an entrance exam for graduate studies, and some schools use it still, and some absolutely you have to have this minimum grade, or we don't even want to look at your application. And that actually happened to me. But anyways, so I got my CCRN right at the time that I switched to CVICU, and studying for the GRE. I did take the GRE. It's probably the most torturous test that I've ever taken in my entire life. I am not a great test taker. I do have test anxiety, and the thing with the GRE is that while it gives you like middle school level math, they purposefully try to trick you, and then you have to figure out the best way to do this in less than 2 minutes, which sounds like a decent amount of time, but for these math problems that require maybe 3-4 lengthy steps, if you know what you're doing, 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes kind of creeps up on you. So that, and then the verbal, they use words that are naturally not common day vocabulary. So it just wasn't a fun test for me. And it's not cheap. I think it was like $205. I did take it twice, although I only studied every day, but I studied for 2 weeks before taking it again, because one of the schools that I applied to would not look at my application unless my cumulative score was a 300 or above. And that didn't happen for me. So needless to say that I, got a rejection letter from that school, and that's okay. I knew it was coming, but it's fine. It wasn't meant to be for me to go to that school. So I ended up leaving the CVICU to take advantage of some of the crisis rates that were going on. Because of the panorama, nurses were getting paid like $10,000 plus a week and crazy amount of money, also once in a lifetime. And I figured that this would help me, since I wouldn't be working for 3 years while in CRNA school, if I even made it. I had to make that jump. The last 2.5 years was about taking risks, not doubting myself, and just going out on faith. And I applied to multiple schools, but the particular school that I got accepted to had the earliest application deadline, and they just basically got the ball rolling sooner than any of the other schools that I either had applied to or was preparing to apply to. And I just sent the application in. Sometime after that, I would say maybe 2 to 3 weeks, I got an email saying that I had qualified for an interview. And I didn't think that I was gonna even get that far. So, and people wonder why I get all tearful about this. It's because it still blows my mind. This is an amazing opportunity for me, and I never thought that it was possible. Not because I'm not smart, but because out of 4 million nurses in the US, only 41,000 are CRNAs. And of the 41,000, it's only like 4% that are African American or Black. So that is about like 1,080, something like that. So the odds were really against me, but I made it. So anyways, before I got to the interview, I studied, different things from my CCRN book, brushed up on algorithms like ACLS, the normal limits for different labs, catheter pressures, different things like that, and just trying to be ready for anything. And then interview day came, and it was very nerve-wracking, even up to and including picking my outfit, because it was for a Zoom video. And I mean, I'm like OCD type A when it comes to the fine details, but I wanted to make sure that my video was flattering and I looked professional, but not like I was trying too hard. Even if you don't want to admit it, or if you didn't know, I'm gonna let you know that those things matter. So I had 2 professors from the program interview me, and they told me, you got 15 minutes. We're going to ask you these questions. They suggest being clear and concise in your answers, because if you ramble on, that gets boring, they don't like that, and you can run out of time. They don't really get a chance to ask all the questions that helps them determine whether or not you're good for their program. And it's not even necessarily if you're smart enough for their program, because they can see your resume, they see your experience. You have to write an essay usually to submit with your application. They take your GRE exam results if you even had to take that. And if you're certified, there's numerous certifications, but CCRN to start. It's not necessarily an easy test. So they know that you are intelligent and you are a great critical care nurse, but they need to know that personality-wise, you are a good fit for their program. So did my interview. After that, it was a waiting game, and it was very nerve-wracking. Maybe a week later, I got another email, and had I not seen the email right when I woke up, I probably wouldn't have opened it so quickly, because my fate was going to be decided, at least with that school, with that email. Because when you wake up, you're kind of disoriented. I was accepted, and I could not believe it. It is still a dream. It was a very long road, and emotionally it was hard. I've spent a lot of money, and the acceptance is only the beginning. So then after that, I got onto YouTube and I started looking up everybody's videos about, CRNA school, day in the life of, even some of the anesthesiologist videos. There's not a whole lot out there. Because I look to YouTube every time I want to start something new, I figured I'd give back. So on this channel, I plan to vlog my experience as a non-traditional grad student, and just to get an idea of what it's like to go from applicant to SRNA to CRNA. Please subscribe and hit the little bell so you can get the notifications when I post new videos. If you have any questions, you're welcome to comment below or send me a private message. I'll do my best to answer. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that if you made it this far, you enjoyed my story. And I look forward to talking to you all on the next video. Thank you for watching.